Today's episode is brought to you by AOS Kitchens, the South's leading outdoor kitchen design and installation specialists.
Welcome to a very special episode of the Meet and Greet Barbecue podcast. This is our 50th episode. I know, I didn't think we'd survive this long either, but Owen and I just want to talk about a few things that we've learned over the last 50 episodes, and I thank you all for listening. Without much further ado, here's myself and Owen. Hello,
Hey.
Owen. Hey. For anyone
50th episode.
Wait, for anyone who doesn't know who you are, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Owen. I'm an alcohol. No, wrong one.
Well, we're definitely not anonymous.
Yeah, definitely not anonymous. 50th episode, man. Can you believe it?
I know, right? I mean, what was it? 2.5 years ago? Kind of sitting there talking about things that we could do where we wouldn't be boring each other's wives to death, talking about barbecue, and we came up with this. Crazy, right?
Yeah, well, we launched 2 years ago, end of February 21. So I think first episode, first week, second week of March. So yeah, time's gone by. Before we truly get into it, I think I wanted to tell everyone that because it's our 50th episode, and we want to thank everyone for listening and all the support that everyone's given us. We're going to do a giveaway for our 50th. So what we've got is a ticket to Sizzle Fest. We have got a £25 meat box voucher, and also we've got some Meet and Greet Barbecue podcast merch. So we've got mugs, apron, t-shirt. So stay tuned. We'll tell you how you can win that little bundle later on in this podcast. But yeah, at least we can kick off with a nice giveaway for everyone.
Where's my meat box? Where's yours? That's how much we care, right? Hey, that's how much we care, though, right? But yeah, we're still in shock that people are still listening 50 episodes on, which is great. But full of content, aren't we? That's why, I guess. Looking back at the last 50 episodes, Owen, what's really stuck with you?
Probably
Not
how
much.
much yeah, no, absolutely nothing. To be honest with you, I think actually just how I probably wasn't as knowledgeable about barbecue as I perhaps thought I was when we first started. I thought, I've done a bit of smoking. I've got a Weber kettle. I've been using that for years. I know what I'm doing. And it's only when you start speaking to some of the fantastic guests that we've had that actually you think, yeah, these guys know what they're talking about. So you almost feel like a bit imposter syndrome. So certainly when we first started and we were talking to some people and it suddenly really, maybe I don't know as much as you, but it's been, I think I've taken a lot of tips from people, and actually brought that into my own cooking when I can. So from that aspect, just from a personal point of view, I've learned a lot by doing this. So yeah, it's been fantastic. But what about you?
Well, first and foremost, it's pronounced Kamado, not Komodo. That was quite an important lesson for me, of course. But even through to things like just considering the morals of like the charcoal you're buying and what that's actually doing to the environment and meat quality. I mean, always used to try and go to butchers and things to get access to the best kind of local bits and pieces, but there's so many different options out there. And I mean, we've talked to people who are championing kind of grass-fed like briskets, for example, and talking about the differences compared to like some of the USD stuff and things that I would never have really considered before, and it's changed not only what I'm cooking, how I'm grilling it, and also kind of evolution of barbecue through that time as well. Actually, one I've owned rather than anything else. Has it changed how you cook and what you cook?
Yeah, definitely. I think again, the more, but I think by doing the podcast, we've met more people than we probably would have if we hadn't have been doing the podcast. So
Hello, Sue.
naturally, So I think naturally what we've done by having those conversations, by meeting those people face to face, tasting their food, live at festivals or shows or wherever we've been, that actually it makes you just want to go home and cook it, doesn't it? And I don't think I probably would have been as inspired by just looking at Instagram or Facebook or whatever, just on its own.
Yeah, I'd say a good example of that is if you listen back to the Cornish Carnivore episode, and I was talking to him about pulled pork, and he was talking about I'd been doing it at like 105, maybe 110. He said, no, go like 125, 130 to have a different cut completely. Try pork neck. He finds it works much different. And things like that we never would have learned just through looking at Instagram posts, and I'd implore people, if you know people out there who love barbecue, talk to them. If you're speaking to people on Instagram, or looking at things, reach out to them. So many people in the community love a chat, and they will get back to you and they will talk to you. And the more conversations that are happening, it's just going to help you and the person you're reaching out to. Go speak to people about barbecue.
Yeah, absolutely. Has there been any particular kind of highlights for you over the last couple of years?
I would say things that we did at the time. I was so excited when we spoke to Scale and Taylor. Granted, we had to stay up till 2 a.m. and funny story about that. So Owen and I got the timings wrong. So we logged in at 1 o'clock in the morning, having already done a record earlier that day. And we're like, where is she? She promised she'd come. Checked. Nope, got it wrong. So I had to wait another hour and started recording at 2 a.m. But she was one of the first big kind of people that I'd started watching and following on Instagram because of how often she was putting bits out, but also the variety of things she was putting out. It wasn't just barbecuing for barbecuing's sake. It was actually feeding a family. And so speaking to her, I really enjoyed it. And I thought, cool, we're now talking to people across the world as well that made a big difference. Was there anything that when we started doing it, or a certain episode or anything that stood out for you that made you think about what we were doing?
I know I've asked you the question, but I'm finding it difficult to answer because I think I think what we've tried to do, and I hope everyone's enjoyed what we've tried to do in the sense that like variation of things. So it's I think we started originally, there was a lot of sort of back garden barbecue kind of enthusiasts, but naturally we've started talking to businesses, charcoal companies, manufacturers, recipe book authors, barbecue school owners. So I think what we've tried to do, and I think that's kind of what I'm proud of that we've done, is just try to keep it varied, to keep giving people different types of content. So you do hear from the people that are like us. We're not professionals in any way, shape or form. So we are those back garden enthusiasts, but equally, people that have made this their livelihood actually. And it's really interesting how a lot of people have started as that enthusiast and then turned what is a passion into now a career and a business for them. And I think that's been a highlight. And again, I know that by the time this comes out, we just spoke, we'll be a number of episodes into season 5. And I think we've been talking about the mental health special a fair amount because that was the last episode of the last season. But it's, again, I'm quite proud that we did that one. I think that was quite an important message. Yes, it was absolutely about barbecue, but there was a serious message behind that. And I think, the kind of comments and things that we've received and the Q Together guys have received off the back of that, it's kind of like a proud moment.
Well, one of the things that I remember you being most excited about before we did it was the summer specials that we put together and put out, because I think we were both shocked that we managed to put together the small lineup that we did for that and the quality of that. But also, again, you guys might have heard this if you've spoken to us in person. It's so difficult to put together recordings, particularly around kind of summertime, because everyone's busy, everyone wants to see their family, everyone is enjoying themselves, and it's so much harder to get people to sit down and speak to us, even if they want to. But the concept of that as well, because it was you who thought, right, let's do these as summer specials then, rather than trying to change things, do things different, and just aim for those sorts of guests, was stroke of genius, it felt like at the time. But that's the thing I remember you getting most excited about beforehand.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Genevieve Taylor, Adam Pennell, Shropshire Lad, Marcus Borden, they're fantastic content creators, cooks, authors.
Charles was great
presenters.
as well, kind of what he represents in barbecue as well. Great to have him talking in depth about his background as well, because you see all of these shops like Alton's as well with Jay, who we've spoken to, but the story behind how they came about and why those people are interested in barbecue in the first place can be fascinating, and you learn from that.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there a particular kind of, I don't know, feature or conversational topic point that we kind of, go back to on most episodes that kind of stands out for you? Barbecue Bingo is brought to you by Lumberjack Food Company, your ticket to Flavortown.
Barbecue Bingo is something that we, funnily enough, have been talking about stripping back. And then as soon as we actually talk to people face to face and through Instagram, get people's feedback, I think we're both surprised how interested in that people were, because O and I were quite afraid that A, it was getting stale, and B, people don't always have the time to put it together in the way that we initially thought that maybe they would, and maybe would latch onto it. But it seems to have encouraged people to try different things as well, because when they listen and they see random things popped up, they think, I haven't tried that, I'll give it a go. But my back catalogue, Barbecue Fails has a special place in my heart, because without them, I'd have nothing to talk about.
Again, that's the favourite thing for me, mainly because actually, obviously we started it because we want people to learn, but more often than not, they're quite amusing stories, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
And I can imagine, I certainly can almost relate to most stories, perhaps not the serious ones where people might have set their shack on fire or something, but for most stories where you've burnt this or burnt yourself or done whatever, I think people can relate, which is quite nice. But yeah, more often than not, they're quite funny stories.
Plus, everyone cocks up. No one, it's very rare that people put their mistakes on Instagram. And that can be very intimidating when you first log on. I know when I first kind of made a barbecue account and was looking around and doing bits and pieces, I thought, God, why the hell am I doing this when I'm looking at what other people are putting together and doing? And firstly, everyone feels that way about what everyone else is doing. So if you're first starting out, or you're thinking, oh, maybe I want to kind of take photos of these things so I can, even if just for yourself as like a personal diary, so you can remember them and scroll back. And you think, well, what's the point if when you see what other people are doing? Everyone feels that way, and everyone feels a bit like a charlatan when they're putting stuff up and looking around. But when people then go further and tell their stories about how they've messed up, how they've accidentally burnt their foot because they were wearing sandals and charcoal's come down, how they've melted like fire guards and stuff, how they've caught fire to their shacks, as you said, how they've served raw meat because there's been like heat bleed onto thermometers and stuff. It makes you go, well, I can definitely do that. So why can't I do the other side of it, And that in itself is sometimes more inspiring, I think, than talking to geniuses like Urban Streetery or Spice Punch about how the hell they're at the level that they are.
Yeah. What for you are you looking forward to? I mean, the plan is, right, unless you're about to drop a bombshell, is that we do another 50 episodes. What do you think we can do for the next 50? Much of the same, or do you think we should be trying some new things?
Most importantly, even if we put tweaks on, I think it's important that we don't change what this podcast is and what it's about. I think we've both been maybe mistaken in the past where we're worried about going over similar territory or too much of the same. But again, once you actually talk to the listeners and you see how more popularity we get as the podcast goes on, and looking behind the curtain a bit now as well for people listening, it's not like we have one or two episodes that have gone through the roof compared to others, but we still have people listening to the first sets of episodes that we did. It's not like people have just moved on from it. So I think it's important we keep the essence of what we are. I would like to try and get a bit more diversity. And I think that we have that with this upcoming series that people would have started listening to by the time they've are on this episode, as it were, because we have tried our best to get more female barbecuers on and trying to kind of reach out across the globe. But I think maybe, is there more of that we can do? Because with the more diversity, the more different stories you get out of it as well. What about yourself?
Yeah, funny enough, that's quite an interesting point, isn't it? Because I think we've quite openly said that, this is a UK barbecue podcast. It's about, we've had butchers on, we've spoken to many people about, the virtues of buying local or, using British wherever possible, and quite rightly so. But I suppose at the same time, we don't want to pigeonhole ourselves into just only speaking to people within Britain, because again, there's obviously some fantastic barbecuers across the globe, and actually, whilst we've spoken to a great set of people, there's still a lot of barbecuers and barbecue businesses and recipe book creators, etc., that we have yet to speak to. I'd love to get an aim, and that I've been trying, because I do all the guest bookings generally. Dan's the editing man. I'd really love to get a celebrity of some sort that has a passion for barbecue. Not saying that we haven't spoken to celebrities, because in the barbecue scene they are celebrities, but a real big. I'd love to get a star on. You know what I mean?
Someone like Chico from Chico Time, yeah. So someone like that, one of the cheeky girls on,
yeah.
So something like that.
Someone that got to Pop Idol semi-final in 2001.
Exactly. Tip one out for Darius. But that sort of thing, it's also someone who's over in what we would call Central Europe or mainland Europe, as it is. I mean, Jürgen, we had a fantastic conversation with Jürgen while he was living across in Ireland, or was it Northern Ireland? He was in one of the two, and he's moved now across back into kind of more Central Europe. But it'd be great to speak to some of those other grillers as well, because like German barbecue is absolutely huge, and I follow some German accounts, and maybe we should be doing more work on that side of things. You already would have seen that we've got more Americans on for this series as well, which is nice. And more people have appeared on TV. To be fair, you could argue whether or not they're celebrities, but it's nice to be getting those sorts of names. But just to keep enjoying it, I think the problem that both Owen and I would have is if we ever got to the point where we begrudged doing these, and we're nowhere near that point at the moment. But I think if it gets there, we've started doing something wrong. So tell us as well if it starts getting crap.
Yeah, I think that's I know that we say it at the end of every episode, and for a while we did get a few people sort of messaging in and commenting about what they want us to talk about, and certainly if we weren't covering certain things, that we got some feedback. I really want that to continue. We can only get better and keep doing what we're doing if we know that what people are interested in. As much as we kind of do our research when we talk to people, we just want to know what our listeners want us to talk about. So anyone that is listening, I really would encourage you, please just get in contact with us and let us know, even if it is covering old ground but we put a different spin on it, or if it's something completely new, or I mean, even if it's just loosely related to barbecue, that's fine too, or food in general. I think we want to kind of hear about that. I think what's quite good, again, by the time this comes out, will be some way into our 5th series, which I think what's making this one quite fun for us is that almost all of the guests have been recommended by
Yeah.
our listeners.
That was a nice tweak for this series as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So there was a couple, that we'd already had in kind of set up and in play, but yeah, majority of the guests have been chosen by our listeners. So fingers crossed that's again, the ones that we've recorded so far, I think have been some of our best.
On that point as well, if you want us to talk to someone, what we've learned from the production of this series is reach out to them, comment on one of their posts, but tag us in. That makes a huge difference. If you think, I'd love to hear someone talking in depth with this person, if you just go on one of their posts, particularly one of their more recent ones, be one of the first commenters and be like, look at this, you should speak to Meet and Greet Barbecue podcast. That helps a lot. And if we can be getting you to do some of the workload as well, we're never going to say no to that, right? Behind the curtain again, what have you learned over the last 50 episodes about putting this podcast together? Because we do get asked about more behind the curtain stuff when we speak to people.
That it doesn't take much to start a podcast.
Shh, we don't want competition.
Competition's good. Actually, running a podcast is fairly inexpensive to it. It's got a fairly inexpensive entry point.
Mm-hmm.
So what in reality, what do we spend? 40 quid on a mic each.
Mm-hmm.
And we pay for Zoom and the hosting service or whatever. So all in all, it's not a huge expense. So that was the first thing. Obviously, we both came into this completely blind. A lot of it has just been trial and error. And I think what we did is that looking back on that first season,
mm-hmm.
we didn't have anything YouTube based. We didn't really focus on the accessibility side of the podcast and having transcripts and those types of things. I think we're more au fait with kind of the stats and perhaps how
mm-hmm.
we market the podcast through social and YouTube and those types of things. So I think probably from that side of things, and I know that's talking more about the stuff that I do,
mm-hmm.
but yeah, I've learned a great deal in that respect. Weirdly, I think the only thing that I haven't really got involved in is the editing. In any way, I haven't come anywhere near that. Just as much as you wouldn't know how to upload an episode to be put out to Spotify and all that type of stuff. So I suppose that's why it works. But
yeah, also one of the first adopters ever of AI, I'd argue, with Otter on board helping us with this transcribing. That's nice. What I think, if you go back and listen to the first series, we were far too ambitious with what we were recording and the length of time that we were recording. You can argue whether or not all of it was interesting or not. We certainly learned from it and it launched us. So I'm never going to criticize what we've done in the past. And we had some fantastic guests, even early on, talking to Mr. Beads, for example, classic episode. Go back and listen. But we changed how we record. So it tends to be between an hour and an hour and a half that we record. And it means we get, I'd argue, far more juicy stuff out of our guests when they know there's a time limit. I think that makes a big difference. It makes it easier to edit. But also I was a lot more, obsessive with cleaning up the audio in the first series. And it sounds great, but I think it sounds less fluid and real and like a conversation if I go through and spend 6 hours cutting out every or stumble or little cough. It takes away actually from what the conversation is and the flow of it. Those are the main kind of technical points that I've learned from a podcast. That and listening back to yourself talking about the mistakes you've made over and over again can be slightly demoralizing. I mean, I don't know about you, but I hate the sound of my own voice when I have to listen back. And editing is a long process, or it can be anyway. And so having to listen to yourself for like 5 hours, particularly in some of those earlier episodes for editing, was not fun.
No, that first season, like trying to listen to yourself, it was awful. But I think now, obviously once you've edited it, I always proof listen to the whole episode before we put it out. And now it's fine. You're just used to it. It's your own voice, and obviously seeing yourself and watching yourself on the telly or whatever, when we're putting the episodes out for YouTube, you do get used to that in the end.
Plus, less is more. That's the other thing that we've been conscious about trying to do more and more as we go along, is when we're putting these together, if we've spoken for more than 25% of the record, have we done too much?
Oh, I think
exactly. And we were doing that in the first series.
First season, oh yes, even more than that. I think most of the time between the two of us, we're less than 15% generally of an episode now.
Mm-hmm.
Apart from this one, we're 50-50.
But what a 15%, eh? I'd love to know if there is more from us people want to hear. What is it? And maybe we need to do more of these one-off episodes that the two of us. That is something that has been suggested to us when we've been speaking to people in the past. Maybe that we drop in occasionally 15-20-minute episodes of just the two of us talking about one topic. Maybe that's something for the future. But again, more feedback would be loved.
Just before we move on, just going back to another thing that's changed over these 50 episodes is, this is going to make me sound so bad, but those first couple of seasons, and I think again probably more so the nerves as we tried to speak to different people, is that I'd be having 2-3 beers an episode just to kind of it's a bit of Dutch courage, right? Because you've never spoke to a certain person or whatever. And some of those episodes, certainly in the ones that lasted 2.5 hours, 3 hours, even though we might have only put out an hour and a half, but we actually recorded for 3 hours, you're half cut by the time you come to the end of it. That's a big difference now. Obviously, we're recording during the week, where I think initially we started at the weekends, and I think that was the problem. Most of the time now, I drink water or a cup of tea. I almost feel like, I don't know, less professional by having a beer, if that makes sense.
Speak for yourself.
I know you're literally sat there drinking a wine. It's a Monday night.
Finished a wine. And people know, and I still get people talking to me about my Irish coffees. But I think the other point on that, we were drinking a lot more in those episodes, to the point where we're even talking about beer in each episode. But also, you've got to remember that was still in the height of the pandemic. There was still a lot going on, and on that point of mental health and the mental health special we did, I think anyone can go back to then and look at the units they were probably putting down compared to now. Hugely different. But if I'm having like a long, borderline personal conversation with someone, I always find it's easier if I've got some sort of drink with me. I know you're slightly different on that point, but it just means I have a better time, frankly. And it also means that I care less about making a tit of myself by asking questions that maybe you'd be too afraid to ask, or think yourself silly for asking without them. So yeah,
I've got to be honest though, one of the main things is that I just can't stop burping once I've drunk beer, and I don't want to keep doing it on the podcast. Again, most people won't see it because I won't be talking at the time, but I'm trying to stop myself from silent burping.
Oh, we love a mute button. Or if Owen's not doing that, there's a life hack for you, Owen. If you need to burp or cough, mute yourself. Game changer. The absolute game changer.
If you've been looking or thinking about an outdoor kitchen, then look no further than AOS Outdoor Kitchens.
They are the South's leading outdoor kitchen design and installation specialists.
Their extensive showroom is based just outside Bournemouth on the Dorset-Hampshire border, and as well as numerous in-store displays, also features a live outdoor kitchen where they cook every week on Kamado grills, pizza ovens, and all filmed and shown on YouTube.
They offer a wealth of knowledge on how to transform your patio into the most incredible outdoor dining area with styles and options to suit every budget. And you can guarantee they will be able to create something perfectly suited to you and your home.
They stock and supply everything that you're going to need for outdoor cooking, including barbecues, Kamado ovens, pizza ovens, outdoor fridges, and every accessory that you would need to become the ultimate outdoor chef.
So if you want to make yourself the envy of your friends and neighbours, get in touch with them today to arrange a consultation and take the first step in transforming your back garden into the most incredible entertainment space.
Visit aoskitchens.co.uk.
Moving on. So we've learned a lot about cooking and barbecuing over the last 50 episodes, but is there still anything that intimidates you, or you feel that maybe you're not good enough at yet, that you either want to put more practice in or you just struggle with?
I've still never used an offset smoker. I really want to use an offset smoker. We've spoken to enough people in these episodes that kind of say to us, oh yeah, well my first offset was a Landman this, or a Charbroil this, etc. It held no heat and all that kind of stuff, burnt through so much fuel. And I've now gone to XYZ. I've spent thousands of pounds on this one or whatever. I really want to try it. But I don't want to go in those entry level ones, because you're not going to get the best. You're probably not going to get the best results, or you're going to be using so much fuel. It's not really that economical. I also don't want to drop $5,000 on an offset smoker that I'm potentially going to be proper shit at
and use twice, 3 times.
Yeah. So I've got to try and find something that's that can still give me that experience, that will then either I'll go full in and just be one of those offset guys or what. But I definitely have the itch to buy something, and it's getting stronger. Obviously, I haven't bought one for a little while, mainly because I haven't needed to, obviously. But again, by this time it'll be ages ago since the time this comes out, but we've recently just gone to the Alton's barbecue launch event.
Yeah,
walking around the showroom, I'd have loved to have walked away with two or three barbecues there.
Those new trailers.
Yeah, they look magic. But even when we've been to Sizzle Fest and you walk around Charles's showroom and you see these TMG pits and all these kind of fantastic looking barbecues, and even some of the guests that some of the barbecues from the guests that we've spoken to, even like Della Vita's and Smoky Oak Barbecue and all these other brands that we've been speaking to, I really want one. I just want to do more with fire. Is probably a really long-winded way of saying I want to do more with live fire. Actual wood, more so than charcoal or wood pellets. What about you?
So mine's more about the actual meat that I'm cooking. So I've only really done 1 or 2 briskets in the past with mixed results. Both of them I wasn't particularly happy with, but both of them I got decent reviews of. And the second one in particular, there was a bit of jiggle and stuff there, but it's not the level that I want. And I'm intimidated to go out and drop a lot of money on like an American brisket, effectively, which the main feedback I've had when I've talked to people in depth about it is you can get amazing results from grass-fed and you'll get the best flavors from grass-fed, but it's so much harder to nail it. Whereas if you spend a lot more money and get one of those grain-fed, big-ass American cows flown over and cut up right for you, it's easier to get to results and almost start there and work your way back. But I don't want to drop like 80, 90 quid or more on a piece of meat and mess it up, because you can go into the hundreds, right?
Oh, yeah, and some.
Yeah.
I don't really have that interest in trying the US meat, mainly because of I don't want to spend the money, and I just think, and I've spoken many a times to you about it, that my local butcher does exactly what I want, and I've had some really good. Well, you've tried some of it. I've had some really good pieces of brisket out of it. Sure, it might not be as good as in terms of the bend or whatever from as a grain fed, but still moist, still tender, tastes good, and it's a third of the price, and it's local. It just ticks all the boxes for me.
Yeah, air miles is another big reason why I've kind of held off doing that. I think at some point I probably or inevitably will, but when, I don't know. And also on that point, I would love to try a proper good grade A5 Wagyu.
Yeah, I've never done that either.
But again, you don't want to chuck down all of that money and then cock it up. So do you pay someone to do it for you? If you do, you're paying way more on top of something that's already expensive. But I want to do it at some point. And again, it's the intimidation factor of it, I think. Again, you don't want to drop that much money and cock it up, right?
No, but again, I suppose it goes back to everything that we speak about. You only learn from your mistakes, and you never, if you can afford to do it, first and foremost, then you've got to try it at some point. Otherwise, you never know.
But the other point I want to make on that is why would you want to do that when on the flip side you can have phenomenal reverse seared thick cut steaks that you're going to love and enjoy, and there's still so much other types of barbecue food that you can do. So is it actually worth dropping hundreds of pounds on these things for a one-off experience when you could still be nailing everything else? I don't know. That those are the things that kind of intimidate or stopping me.
Well, you can only answer that.
You can. Again, love to hear people talk about it. If you guys want to message us or drop comments and things, it's these sorts of questions that I think I need to be answering for myself over the next 3, 4, 5 months.
This has got nothing to do with the podcast, but barbecue. I can't remember if we had this conversation the other night when we met up, but I'm far more conscious about fuel, and how much I'm using, and I'm perhaps not buying it as frequently as I was. I suppose I'm just being more cost savvy in terms of what I'm buying, how much I'm using, and it's certainly, obviously, again, we're in an economic downturn. I think I'm just trying to be more cautious now. So there are some times where I want to do something, or I want to use a particular piece of equipment, but then I look at the size or how long I'm going to be using it and think, that's not a perfect example. I wanted to cook something the other night, and I thought I hadn't had any Traeger pellets for quite some time. And I got a voucher. I ended up using the voucher to buy some pellets, and stocked up again. And I was only cooking something for myself, and I thought, I don't want to fire up a massive Traeger Ironwood 885 for a pork chop and 5 potato wedges or whatever it might have been, because of the fuel costs. So I ended up, I think I used something else where I only used like 3 pieces of wood, or 4 or 5 pieces of charcoal on a smaller barbecue. But previous to that, I wouldn't have cared. I don't know what I don't know really. I don't know what's changed, but I'm just more conscious about the fuel I'm using, how much I'm using, the cost of the fuel, and just using the appropriate equipment to what I'm actually cooking on.
See, that's why you were talking about the Ranger so much the other day when we were going around Alton's, because it's set up in a way that you're going to be doing much more personal, smaller cooks and using less pellets. Similarly, I always wonder if like the master builds that have like the gravity fed charcoal, would you even do you think that it would use less charcoal, or do you think you'd even realize how much you were getting through if the difference was every so often you just have to top it up from the side rather than actually, okay, I'm lighting the chimney starter, I'm only going to use half a chimney, can I get away with a third of a chimney and then top it up, etc.? Does that have a difference on the fuel economy? I'd love to know that as well, if someone's been doing the two. Because you're right, not only I think are we in the cost of living crisis, but again, I mentioned it earlier, both of us have learned a lot more about the ethics of charcoal as well. And I think that also plays on your mind, particularly when you got kids and looking at everything else going on in the world at the moment. Do you really want to be setting fire to it as badly as it is? You know, that kind of comes into it. But I do like that damn good food.
Yeah, of course, the environment comes into it. I mean, first, I think it's and predominantly, it's a cost thing. But then I suppose if you're burning less fuel, it's more cost efficient, but also it's better for the environment. But yeah, again, just something I thought was worth discussing. It's certainly something that's changed in me over the last sort of 6 months or so. Just really more conscious.
Plus, better quality fuel tends to last much longer as well. It may look more expensive to buy, but some of those charcoals so much hotter, burn for so much longer, and actually you're saving money by doing the research and looking into that. So it's always worth spending 15, 20 an hour looking into the different options before making that purchase.
Yeah, I mean, the perfect example, right? I think I said to you the other day, I bought some Bintichan charcoal, and I bought it about a year ago, a big box of it. It was fairly pricey, but because it was like two and a half times the price of the normal charcoal that I bought, so a year later, I've hardly used it because I thought, if I'm only cooking a couple of sausages, I don't want to use the expensive charcoal, or, well, actually, I want to use this charcoal because I'm cooking a brisket rather than the Bintichan. So it's like a year down the line, and I've been so conscious about using it only for something so specific that I still haven't cooked within a year. So now I'm giving it a go, but it's just going back to that whole cost point. It's silly now. I'm stopping myself using something because of how much I paid for it, and then actually not getting the value of it at all. But there we are.
So is that your barbecue fail for this episode, or do you have another one to share with people that maybe either you haven't mentioned yet on the podcast, or something that you may have mentioned before but is your most embarrassing or biggest one?
I don't know. I don't necessarily think that's a fail. I mean,
buying expensive charcoal to not use over a year? I don't know.
Yeah, that's stupidity.
It's a costly ornament in your shed, then, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. Well, I decided to use the Oni the other night and cook some burgers. I thought I'd give that a go, so I put it in a cast iron skillet. I don't know, you probably can't see this, and definitely people listening can't see it, but I definitely sliced my finger out with using the bread knife to cut my hand. So that's my fail for this time. Not even actually the cooking part, cut some bread.
I still think, for me, one of my biggest fails, which we talked about a few series ago, but I was so excited when I got the monolith about getting the pizza stone and doing pizzas and stuff on there. And literally the first pizza I did, brand new pizza stone, all hot and everything, got the peel, haven't put anywhere near enough flour or semolina or whatever on there, cornmeal, to try and get the pizza moving. So I'm there shuffling, flick, and the pizza just flips face down on the pizza stone. And immediately everything just melts and burns and destroys this pizza stone. Obviously you can still use it, but just how it looks, the smells and stuff, I need to try and burn all the stuff off because I couldn't get it to scrape off and everything. And you think, I'm so excited for this, and I've just ruined, or at least for me, ruined this whole evening and possibly 2 days when I'm trying to sort it out. And you get so angry at yourself for these things, but that's the one that sticks with me the whole time.
I have thought of a barbecue fail, which I can't remember if I did mention it, because it was Christmas at the time and we weren't recording. I think by the time we started recording in January, I'd forgotten about it.
All that alcohol over Christmas. Yeah, I get that.
Well, that's it. I was outside cooking and I can't remember which equipment I was using, but I was also using the gas for frying something on the gas while I was cooking something else. And without even thinking, I think I was serving a lot of dishes. So I was running in outside into the kitchen and I just happened to pick the pan up of whatever I was frying at the time and just put it on my kitchen side whilst I ran back outside to get something else. And obviously that pan was extremely hot. It's been sat directly on a gas fire. And I've got wooden kitchen worktops. So I have burnt a massive ring, basically a massive pan ring into my kitchen worktop, much to my wife's displeasure. I
was going to say you're popular.
We absolutely can't get it out. It's proper burnt in because it was there for maybe 2 or 3 minutes before we realised. So yeah, that's a pretty silly one.
Yeah, fun, but you just need to sand it out when you can be bothered. Get those soft hands working. I know you've got non-workers' hands, but you get on it and sort it out, right?
No, my hand that I have definitely got I've got thinking hands, not doing hands.
Do you know what I would love to do as an episode coming up? And I think, again, we might need our listeners to help us with this. You might disagree with this idea. I would love to get an episode that I don't even edit properly. I don't listen to it back. I just put the intro and outro onto it. Get our wives to sit down and record half an hour just talking about basically what tools we are and about what they've had to put up with, like a barbecue widows podcast, a one-off episode just to get them to talk about the hells of living with us and what that was like, even as like a special.
That would be terrible.
But I bet there's so many fails that we don't remember, or I bet both of us are probably arses when trying to concentrate on the barbecue and sort stuff and being asked to do things. And I think it'd be interesting to hear and for people to see that side.
Speak for yourself. I'm an absolute delight.
Yeah, I know. From years and years of working and doing stuff with you, I know you're an absolute delight at all times. You never get stressed or upset about anything.
No.
I want to hear more about how people can win things, Owen. Tell me more about how people can win these prizes that we're giving away with this special episode.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to refresh, we've got a ticket for Sizzle Fest. We've got a £25 meat box voucher, and we've got some Meet and Greet Barbecue Podcast merch. We're actually going to keep this giveaway off social media, specifically only for people that, you know, are our followers, our listeners to the podcast. So what we want people to do is basically tell us what their favorite moment is in the last 50 episodes and why. You can message us on Instagram. You can email us at meetandgreetbarbecuepodcast@gmail.com. Submit a form on our website and just all tell us who the guest was and what that favorite moment is and why you love it so much. And what we'll do is we'll collate it all. We'll read through, pick our winner. We'll probably get our wives also to help us choose. So there's a bit of impartiality there. And then we'll get in contact with you. So please, leave your contact details and we'll get in contact with you and let you know if you won.
I think one of the easiest ways of doing it, if we've got your Instagram account, is the easiest way for us to be able to get in contact with you and direct message you. Of course, you can enter on our own website and we'll have your contact details that way. But it's easiest for us if it's through something like social media where it's one click of a button. Owen hates when he has to open a separate window to put something together, and I've got to listen to him moan about it, which is not fun for me. And if anything, this is all about making it more fun for me. So yeah, there's my word of advice.
Yeah, but we're not going to be posting about it.
No,
we're going to keep this one off social media. So
it's for you listeners. It's for you listeners, because when we've done bits and pieces before, luckily it seems to be listeners to the podcast that have won it, but we've had lots of people enter stuff we've done before that do not know about the podcast, do not care about the podcast, and once the competition's closed, has quite frankly buggered off. What's the point? That's not for them. That's for you guys. So thank you very much for listening to 50 episodes, and hopefully that's our treat for you all, or at least for one of you, you know. Is there anything else? We always like to ask at the end of an episode of a podcast, Owen, if there's anything that we haven't covered, or if there's anything that you'd like to be talking more about in the barbecue community. What would you like to discuss?
No, I just want to actually, this is our sort of my cheesy commercial plug.
You always tell me off for doing this after an episode. Always tell me off.
I want to say that, you know, obviously, we've been working with Jody from AOS Kitchens, you know, over the last couple of seasons. And again, by the time this comes out, you'd have realised that we're working with him again for season 5. We've met him a few times. We did some cooking down at his showroom.
What a showroom, by the way. Some of the equipment that he has is phenomenal.
Absolutely. And the doors that's opened since. So again, just a shout out to Jody at AOS Kitchens. Also, just a new partnership that we've got with Lumberjacks Food Company.
Mm-hmm.
So Brendan and Jaden, you know, creating some fantastic rubs and sauces, and it's a brand that's really kicked on over the last, you know, year or so. So we're excited to be working with them as well. So anyway, that's my cheesy commercial plug out of the way, but you know, in all seriousness, we are absolutely excited to be working with those two brands. In terms of anything else, I think we kind of cover everything that we want to.
Mm-hmm.
Everything I think we should be doing. So yeah, it's just here's to another 50 episodes, and this feels like it's been quite self-indulgent, but hopefully it's a good episode to listen to.
And you didn't think we could clock up 55 minutes with the two of us talking, hey?
I know. Cringe.
I know how much you can bang on, and so do the listeners. But we got there in the end. But here's to another 50, guys. Thank you all so much for listening. And yeah, just keep on grilling, right?
Yeah, definitely. Contact us on socials, usual places, at Meet and Greet Barbecue Podcast. And like Dan says, until next time, keep on grilling. Today's episode is brought to you by AOS Kitchens, the South's leading outdoor kitchen design and installation specialists.